as we apply it, knowledgeably, and we claim this time and use it productively towards ourselves, that is where we have a return to ourselves, a return to our power, a return to our own sovereignty, a return to our healing journey. These are beautiful things, and retrogrades bring these to us as gifts. Hello, dear friends. Happy Monday. Welcome to your week. I am so grateful to be here with you, and I am so excited to welcome you into this new week full of new days and literally limitless possibilities. We have a bit of a slow week, I'll say, in terms of the transits, and this slowness, I think, is going to be something of a theme the next 4 or 5 months. We have Saturn stationing retrograde just over the weekend, and so that just got started, but we already had Pluto, who had already stationed retrograde in Capricorn, and so because both of those are, one, such slow movers, and two, they really slow down to a complete stop when they station, both, if you look between today, Monday, and a week from now, they're basically in the same exact spot, like sitting on the spot where they are. So if those two things, the Saturn or Pluto making a specific aspect in your chart, that energy is just going to be kind of like a singing bowl that you might like ding, and then the vibration, the sound of it carries for a good long while before it's like completely gone out of your hearing. So those are slow vibrations, slow to unfold and slow to really get a sense of what is it that I'm meant to reflect out of whatever experience it is that energy brings. So over the next 4 or 5 months, we will have a total of 7 planets be retrograde on October 1st. So when we enter the month of October, granted, on October 1st, Mercury will be stationing direct after its next retrograde. So that will have come and gone by October 1st. And then Pluto stations direct, Saturn stations direct. Then in November, Jupiter stations direct, and on into December, first Neptune and then Chiron will both station direct. So that leaves us at the end of the year with Mars retrograde in Gemini and Uranus retrograde in Taurus as we enter 2023. But today I wanted to spend just a little bit of time talking about my perspective, my pair of pennies on retrogrades in general, and like, what is the point? Why do we have this? What does it mean? There's a video that I really want to recommend, which I have already recommended several times lately, but just in case you haven't seen it yet, the Tom Jacobs video where he goes, I think it's audio only, but he goes through his evolutionary interpretation for each of the planets in the natal chart. If they are retrograde at the time of your birth, what does that mean for your overall energy related to each of the planets? It's like 2 hours. He gives like a lot of depth for each one. It's an excellent video. I have 6 retrograde planets, and I found it extremely valuable that he would put this out there for free. It was incredibly helpful. And it really, I would say, like, it really validated the way I was already looking at retrograde as really productive. Like, depending on who you are and your normal way of being in the world, retrograde can be incredibly clarifying and focusing and bringing the energy together inside of yourself, and then the freaking manifestation power that allows, as far as like having your energy collected and focused in a single direction. Like, for example, one Mercury retrograde, I wrote like 60 pages of a book. Haven't worked on it since. Haven't even touched it. But I was like all up in that manuscript for like 3 weeks straight. And it really was like, for that little chunk of time, I just like cut myself off from basically everybody else, and I stopped socializing, and I was working from home at that time. So I really didn't have to go into public, and it really was a time of like pulling my energy back into myself. And then the creativity and the inspiration and the feeling like you need to channel this energy somewhere or you're going to explode. And then you channel it in that more introverted fashion of like writing in private or recording videos in private, or like something where you may be expressing yourself, but you're still kind of in a solitary environment. So retrograde, it definitely is an invitation to withdraw your energy from the world. And I think it's one of those things where when you leave your energy out in the world, it's like those toes are maybe going to get stepped on, because really the energy should have been furled in and like brought back in and be pointed inwards towards your own self-reflection. Like all those words of retrograde, like review and reflect and on and on and on. We've all heard the list, and there is something to that, as far as like even the most extroverted person will experience seasons of needing to draw into themselves in order to find balance. And if you're heavily introverted, then that is often. That's like most of the time. You need to just be inside yourself to keep your balance. And the more time you spend around people, it's like that's the more recovery work that you're going to go and have to do once you get off to yourself in order to find your balance. If you're unfamiliar with how introverted or extroverted you are, I highly recommend the Myers-Briggs 16 personalities test. I'll put a link in the description box for you, so that you can see where you fall on that spectrum, because I think if you are already introverted, by the time there are 7 planets retrograde, you will be in full-on hermit mode. And if you are heavily extroverted, then it may, like you may be able to continue to be extroverted with like 2, 3, 4 planets in retrograde. And again, by the time we get to 7, I'll bet there is like a pulling back, a retracting your energy back into yourself and figuring out, where am I going to point my unique life force energy that I personally am responsible for? It belongs to me. It's my most abundant manifestation. It's just waking up with another day of life in front of me. Where am I going to point that energy today? And that is such an empowering question to get to answer if we are full of life force energy. We're full of inspiration and creativity, and that comes from pulling our energy into ourselves. So I see this like mass retraction of the energy that's out in the world. Like these last few years, like it felt like I mentioned this in the Taurus North Node video, about the cycle that came just before, as far as the North Node going through Gemini. And I feel like there's a ton of people on the planet that have spent the last couple years like kind of fighting it out amongst themselves. And I think these massive retrograde energies are a huge invitation to like just freaking drop it. Like that's how you win at tug of war, is that you drop the rope and you just don't participate. So like this feels like a massive retraction of every individual's energy back into themselves. This is also very harmonious with like all of the Aries energy that we have, as far as like Jupiter and Mars really inspiring an expression, whatever that means for us, in that Aries individual self-empowerment, self-assertive, like taking your dreams and running with it in the physical world, like letting your passion have a stage, having the courage to give yourself a stage for whatever your passion is bubbling forth with. forthwith. Sure. Yeah, there is a shift in the tides is what it feels like. And I have hermited many times in my life, and my process when I withdraw my energy, it happens in about 3 phases. And so I wanted to share those with you as far as like if that's helpful, because every single time I hermit or I feel like I've got to like be less involved in the world, like whether that's specific relationships in my life or it's just like the news or the world in like a more general sense, like when I feel like I need to pull away, inevitably the first significant chunk of time is resting. It is like totally unplugging as far as like giving up every ounce of expecting myself to be productive, letting myself off the hook for having to do anything other than whatever feels like it's going to soothe you the most in this moment. Please do that. And so that is like the first, solid chunk of time. I've seen people who go through these phases pretty quickly. I personally am heavily introverted, and usually by the time, also a recovering workaholic, so by the time I figure out that I need to withdraw, usually it's pretty bad. And the amount of recovery time then is obviously extended. So for me, I mean, that first rest phase, it can be weeks, it can be a couple months. I mean, when your soul is tired, 1-2 hour nap isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like as much of a downshift in mostly the expectations that you're placing on yourself. Like when I need to pull away, almost always, like it's really my own expectations that are driving me. So again, it's a matter of letting myself off the hook and allowing myself to like sink as deeply into my rest cycle as is needed. And I also know from doing this like on multiple occasions that even though it may be weeks or months in my case, again, it doesn't have to last that long, but even though it may be that long, eventually I am rested and ready to re-engage and ready to go again. And like definitely there are moments, especially the times that it's been a couple months of doing this, it's like you start like, like how long am I going to be in the bed? Like it's been 60 days. Like, is it going to be soon? Are we done soon? Like, are we there yet? But there really is like such a beauty to deeply filling your own cup. And I talk about this like repetitively on my channel and in my content because daily self-care is absolutely where I started. And I still have such a beautiful foundational relationship that exists between me and myself, that like that relationship is cultivated inside my daily self-care practices. And the rituals aren't the same every single day. A lot of it is based on what I'm feeling. Like sometimes, adding the blanket is self-care because I'm just a little bit chilly and it's soft and it's nice and it keeps me just a little bit warmer. Or sometimes it's journaling, sometimes it's pulling cards, sometimes it's going for a walk outside, sometimes, like it just really depends on when I check in each morning, I answer whatever it is that myself is asking for. I do the self-care and that's different every day. And these retrograde periods are exceptionally potent for reconnecting into your self-care practices and getting to see and getting to check in like even more deeply, even more intentionally with how am I doing? How am I doing? Am I running on fumes? Is my gas tank full and I'm like charging ahead and feeling great and ready to rock and roll? Like maybe I am. Or maybe I'm in the go, 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 not going to stop until something stops me. And I'll tell you what's going to stop you is 7 planets being retrograde at the same time. Like it's going to be a really bumpy time to be out in the world with the other people. So that's just something to know, is like if you're continuing on with like business as usual and I'm going to be super involved with everybody else, like expect more of the retrograde complications that we so frequently hear about, as far as like miscommunications and failures in technology and cars breaking down and yada yada yada. And I'm like, you know what can't happen if you're in your house by yourself minding your own business? Your car breaking down, a miscommunication with another person, a failure in your Zoom call, or like the timing of a meeting, or like whatever else. So like the more you're minding your own business, the less you're going to have these bumps in the road. And if you are engaging, even though it is retrograde and there are going to be bumps in the road, because maybe you are feeling really strong and you're like, you know what? If we have a little bit of miscommunication, I think we'll figure it out. Maybe it'll help us both learn something about being better communicators. And, you know, if my car breaks down, I trust that that must mean that the universe has some handy dandy little angel that they want to cross my path with, and this is the perfect way to get that done. If that's where you are, retrograde or no retrograde, by all means, like get out in the world. The world needs more of you. But if you're gonna let one miscommunication like send you off the deep end, like I just like maybe, you know, cancel a little bit extra of your stuff, and again, like just point your attention more towards yourself and doing those deep check-ins with, how am I doing? Because ultimately I see these retrogrades as, oh man, like what is possible when we do connect deeply inside of ourselves and we do turn our listening ears deeply to our own needs, such that we are now more informed than ever as far as what we need, and that allows us to meet those needs better than ever before. What's possible as we have this parade of planets stationing direct, like one right after the other for the last 3 months of the year, what's possible is that those are like manifestations to the next level. That like when we check in with ourselves and we start meeting those needs that are in there, we allow the stagnant energy to move. We allow new energy that's coming through to be channeled more effectively, because we are spending more time with ourselves. And we're just simply more aware because we're less distracted by other people and what they have going on. So like time alone like naturally leads to this. And, you know, a little side note here, this is why I think it's really interesting that the pandemic created a mental health pandemic as well, where mental health issues went through the roof. And why is that? I mean, it makes logical sense when you think about when you go into a space by yourself, or like with your immediate family, your closest relationships, if you were quarantining with other people, there's nowhere to really go. Like it's like kind of like I think it was on Orange is the New Black where she was talking about why prison is so scary. It's not because of the other people, it's because you are trapped in there with yourself. It is like you, and there's nowhere to go. There's no one to pull you out of it. There's no one to distract yourself with. And basically, like, what that says to me is that there were a whole lot of people who were ignoring the way that they really felt and using the world to distract themselves. Like, we can be addicted to lots of things that numb us, and the world is one of them. Our technology is one of them. We can use that stuff to help us forget how sad we are or how hurt we are on the inside. And these retrograde periods where we let go of other people and we spend time with ourselves, like any unprocessed things, like that's what's coming to the surface. Those are, you know, I personally believe that there's really a divine timing to retrogrades and what they bring to the surface. So like, I was listening to something the other day, and I included this in my podcast episode that I just recorded called Slow Times, that'll air on the channel on Wednesday. But Matt Kahn was talking in one of his videos about the ego and how it protects us, and it monitors how much we can handle. And when there are emotions that are beyond our ability to cope with in that moment using our emotional coping skills, the ego rejects those emotions into the body, into the subconscious, like saves them for later, like that little dismiss button on your computer updates that you can press for 2 years in a row. Yeah, it's like, I'll just put that off because I don't think I could take much more at this point. So like that like foundation of the ego is protecting us. The ego keeps out of our awareness anything that is beyond our ability to handle. So if you even take that as a theory and bump it up against like then what is surfacing during a retrograde, it's like, isn't it ipso facto, these must be things that I am ready to handle? You know, like if it's able to even reach your awareness, if the ego let it through, like there must be a reason, like there must be something within this that I am ready to face, I am ready to heal, I am ready to transmute. And what I'm talking about here, I have a tendency to use flowery language, nice sounding language that helps you kind of relax into it. And I love that. And I want to do it always. But what I'm talking about here is pain surfacing, you know, like that's not fun. That doesn't feel good. These are also bringing up like me wanting to talk about my like pain management skills, as far as like our human mind capacity to compartmentalize pain. I don't know if you've ever really observed your brain during times of physical pain. Usually we're so consumed by physical pain that we are the pain. But if you can like get outside of it and observe pain in your system, it is like freaking fascinating. Because it also reminds me of the concept of shock, which is basically the same thing as the ego that does like helps us prevent too much emotional pain overloading our system. The ego rejects things and puts it in our subconscious in our body. And then you have the body rejecting too much physical pain so that your body will just go into shock at some point. The receptors for pain in that area, they just turn off and they go numb, and they don't tell you that there's painful things happening there because it's protecting you. So like everything about our body, which of course there are like syndromes and things where these mechanisms inside of a physical vessel don't work, but for the most part, most of us experience a divine level of self-protection. That like on a deep level, like whether you even mean to or not, like you are looking out for yourself always, and like helping to protect yourself and helping to give yourself the best possible chance at processing what it is that you're experiencing. Because it's when we can't process, when we have such a backlog of things that we go into either like a depressive kind of state or like a manic state. I mean, it really just depends on the individual. Like that's a backlog. Like we just spin out of control. We spin out of like even the ability to, again, be with ourselves. And these are the kinds of things where retrogrades, it's like, how uncomfortable is it? It's on a scale between I'm going to take a little extra downtime, I'm going to just enjoy my own company a little bit more than I usually do. And if people trigger me, I am going to take that experience back to my inner processes to help me understand and work through it and thank that person for their assistance. I know I will not, I will do my best not to project my hurt feelings onto the person that caused the trigger. I will do my best. And if I am triggered or if I know I'm triggerable, I will do my best to keep myself to myself. So that's like one end of like, you just know it's going to be a little extra alone time. On the other end is like continuing like business as usual and continuing to keep the same levels of socializing, and basically instead of working through your things inside of yourself, the things will be reflected within your relationships. So essentially like socializing and connecting during retrogrades, like you are bringing other people into your healing process. And I mean, there are places and pockets inside of our energy where that's absolutely necessary. You know, like one of my pieces, for example, that I'm working on healing is not allowing my emotions to be like triggered by somebody else who gets triggered from something that I say. something that feels good to me triggers them, and then it triggers me. I am really working on healing this by creating a foundation within myself that says I am responsible for me and they are responsible for them. And think about it, like I would never know how I'm doing on that healing journey if I didn't manifest somebody else into my experience where I say something that feels good to me, they get triggered, and I get to observe the trigger inside of myself instead of being like pulled under by it. And in the observation, I get to have this moment where, wow, I recognize that I've grown. I recognize that I've healed a little bit of that old pattern of like taking responsibility for other people's emotions. And why did I have that experience? Because I manifested somebody into my life. We had a miscommunication, AKA I triggered them with whatever it was that I said. And then I get to have an emotional awareness moment because of it. I really hope that this has helped to kind of maybe, if not shift the perspective around retrogrades and that they're malefic events, at least widen the perspective to acknowledge that like they can be malefic events or they can be rich opportunities to claim yourself, to work through the backlog of things that have been accrued inside of your system, to bring a little extra TLC to yourself. I truly believe that slow times are facilitating that sacred relationship between you and you. And what I mean by slow times is when it seems like nothing is really moving in the world, like in the atmosphere, as far as like the path unfolding, me moving forward towards, at this point, towards what I can even begin to see in my future. I can see what I want. I'm getting glimpses of it. And yet the path to get there is still, it's just not filled in. There's no way I can see how am I going to get there. Okay, well, I guess I'm just going to sit here and really be grateful that I can see I have glimpses of clarity about like what it is that I'm wanting in my future. That's cool. That's new and different. And I'm going to just like take in the scenery where I am. I'm going to be grateful for the slowdown in my world, and I'm going to downshift to match it. And I'm going to maybe take a couple extra naps and go to bed a little earlier, and maybe take some weekends completely off from seeing another soul in the whole world. Just have like a marathon of alone time. Pepper these things in. Welcome to Kansas. There's a tractor driving by, so I'm gonna let it pass. So I think it's really possible that we can open up to see retrogrades as a rebalancing that is most productive when we apply our energies accordingly. A rebalancing where when you think about like astronomically, like what even are retrogrades, it's like planets get too far out of whack, like with the ecliptic of the sun and the earth and our relative position. So them going retrograde is like bringing everything back into balance, and that for our energies, it's like when planets move ahead, we are running forward full speed ahead, and when they're retrograde, we are reassessing and recalculating and making sure that we are going in the best possible way. And that is where, as we apply it, knowledgeably, and we claim this time and use it productively towards ourselves, that is where we have a return to ourselves, a return to our power, a return to our own sovereignty, a return to our healing journey. These are beautiful things, and retrogrades bring these to us as gifts for us to unwrap in the quiet of our own heart. So this is an opportunity, and I invite you to see it this way. I personally find it to feel really, really good to think of retrogrades in this way. I would love to hear your perspective down below. I really, really am sending you the best wishes for your week and for this retrograde season that we are just beginning. Until next time, dear friends, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I. Also, I just noticed that this is airing on 6/6/2022, which inspired me to share life path numbers with you. So in these slow times that we may find ourselves in this retrograde season, life path numbers, along with Myers-Briggs that I mentioned earlier, are a great couple of tools to play with to deepen your relationship with yourself. So I thought of this because I am a life path 6. If you would like to learn yours, I've also listed that link in the description for you. Happy hunting, dear souls, on your journey of self-knowledge and empowerment.